How do school leaders support EdTech initiatives in their school? We're going to talk about that next on the EdTech vlog. Hi, my name is Dr. Matt Harris, and let me give you a little bit of background. So I have worked in schools around the world, either directly in the schools or doing consulting work with them around building educational technology initiatives. So I work with the strategy and the planning from the operational side to the academic side, kind of a holistic view of what does technology look like in a school. Because it can't just be for learning and it can't just be for the main office. It has to be the symbiotic relationship that ties into uses of data and the whole thing. And it's incredibly complex. The most successful ones will always run into issues not only out of the gate, but in continuing on with the sustainability efforts. There's budgeting challenges. There's making sure it's tied to teaching and learning. The whole thing. It can be a very daunting task, and yet one we're kind of expecting in schools around the world these days. Schools are using technology to leverage for learning, for operational efficiency, all sorts of things. We're not getting away from technology. And yet people ask me, what are the elements that you need for success? And I just wrote an article about this. It'll show up on my blog if it hasn't already. It'll be in a number of publications where I talk about the elements needed for kind of that fertile ground for creating valuable and sustained educational technology programs. And again, across the board, academics and operations and the whole deal. Not just supporting teachers and using technology in the classroom, and not just making sure that the hot lunches are ordered and the buses are running on time. I'm talking about the whole thing. And what we find is that in order for technology to work, you kind of need three things. You need resources, you need engagement, and you need leadership. So the resources, I think, are a bit obvious. You have to have the systems and the tools in place to leverage technology going forward. So you have to have the infrastructures, you have to have the technology, in the form of computers or resources or whatever it is. You need to have all of those things in order to be successful. This varies from school to school, so don't think that you have to be loaded up with a number of tablets and various things in order for things to work. You have to be able to understand what you have and plan for it accordingly. That's number one. If you're doing things that follow the mission of the school, then you have to use the technology for learning and for things going forward. To do that, you need a level of engagement out of the staff, specifically the teachers. So if you're trying to be impactful with technology for teaching and learning, you have to have engaged teachers. And without the engaged teachers, they are the ones where the rubber hits the road, right? This is kind of the tipping point and the leverage point of technology within a school. If they're not engaging and they're not trying and doing things, then it's just not going to work. So that engagement is key. But of course, finally, you can't have them engaged or working in isolation. There has to be some driving force. And this is more than just vision and planning. This is really vocalized and outward speaking leadership. Leadership has to speak outwardly in order to make these programs successful. And that's what we're going to talk about right now, is how do you do that? So obviously you can show things within budgets, and you can have vision statements, and you can have planning parties and all of this sort of stuff. And those are critical. But there is the explicit outward support that is incredibly valuable and needed. And a lot of leaders come and ask me and say, well, how do I do it? What does that look like? What are the things that I need to do to show that support? Because I find I'm doing it at the beginning and it works great and everybody loves it, but then a year into the program, we run into problems because nobody knows what's going on. Well, this again comes back to outward and explicit leadership support. And leadership support can offer support in 4 different ways. So there's the offering of resources, there's the offering of time, there's the offering of language, and then there's the offering of recognition. So let's start with resources. So leadership in a school are the ones that have connections to where the resources are. So we've brought in the resources to the school, but they have to be allocated appropriately. By providing those resources to teachers for purpose and making it very explicit that I'm giving you this laptop, or I'm giving you this program, or we're taking the school's budget to support you in this way, that offering of resources gives a tacit understanding by the staff that this is something very important. So make it a very big deal. We're giving everybody these resources. It's all going to happen, and this is what we're looking to do. Or we don't have a lot of resources, so we're going to allocate what we have to these particular teachers to do something impactful. Identify that. Be very clear about it. Be intentional and be vocal about it. And that's again where we come back to this explicit nature. The delivery of resources has to be explicit and strategic and vocal and transparent. And when you do that, your intentionality comes in with what you're looking to provide. Now, of course, with teaching, anybody that's been in a classroom ever knows that the most valuable resource that teachers need is time. You know, with the grading and the assessments and the other programs that have to be done, you know, the day-to-day operations, you know, sometimes they even let these students into the school. It's a real problem. They don't have time. So if you are a leader and you want to show that something is valuable, you allocate time to it. So cancel a staff meeting, move something else, give them some coverage in a classroom. Go teach a class for yourself. I mean, us leaders really need to be in the classroom as much as we can. Give the gift of time. By giving the gift of time, you're telling the teachers this is something very important. Now, when we give time, it doesn't always have to be formal. It doesn't always have to be developing a skill to complete a program. It could be just collaborative learning time. It could be informal meeting time. Those things are just as valuable as your formal professional development that comes in, but it has to be allocated from the leader. Next, language. Language is incredibly valuable. So leaders that are the most effective at this talk about the technology programs in context on a regular basis. Whether it is at a staff meeting and one-to-one sessions and talking with parents through school publications, they use the power of their words to continually remind people that, that the technology elements are an important part of the school and that you're leveraging it for a specific purpose, usually around some very clear learning outcomes. And I mentioned that in another video, those learning outcomes that are clear. But when you do it, you're tying this back to specific people and actions that are being taken, and you're using the language of the technology program itself. So use the terminology, talk about the educational technology elements the same way you would talk about learning elements and curriculum and adolescent development and pastoral elements. You have to use the appropriate language to show that there is value here at the school and that what the teachers are doing is what you're looking going forward. And finally, and this is one that's dead simple, and it goes a really long way with educators. So let me back up just a little bit and talk about what makes a teacher feel valued. So teachers, for the most part, not all of us, get into education because we want to make a difference. We want to have an impact on students' lives, on a program, on something. We want to make value. We're not in it for the money. We're obviously underpaid. That's a universal truth. And you're not going to solve that real easily with bonus structures or merit-based pay. The research has shown this just doesn't work to help motivation. What does help teachers is recognition, celebration. So identifying things that they have done well and recognizing it. Recognizing it in front of the staff and some sort of publication. Again, using that power of language to talk about the great things that the teachers have done at your school goes leaps and bounds above any other thing that you can really give them, maybe except for time. That recognition of a quality project or a student learning outcome or something amazing that showed up in the paper or something like that. That recognition shows teachers that what they're doing has value and impact, which strikes exactly where they're hoping to be honored. Okay? So give them those recognitions, give them some flowers, show them that you care. And by combining those four elements, so resources, time, language, and recognition, we can show outwardly as a leader that the technology program is important to us and we want it to move towards our intended vision in a sustained manner over time. Not just this one-off, like I'm going to give you time straight away, but we're going to do it every year. We're going to do recognitions for small groups of people. We're going to talk about certifications that you made. We're going to continue doing this over time. And that continuity has to come from the leadership. So hey, do me a favor, subscribe to my channel down here at the bottom because we're going to talk about more things related to educational technology and tools and events and all sorts of fun stuff. And I'd love to share this and start a conversation with all of you. And please follow me on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is @MattHarrisEdD, and I talk about a number of things related to leadership, education, technology, digital citizenship, a whole swath of ideas. And I'd love to share and connect with you. So please follow me on Twitter, connect with me there, subscribe here, and let's just continue that conversation. Hey, thanks for listening, and have a great day.